I'm David Griffin. It's the 16th of September 2018. I'm here at Derbyshire County Cricket Club and I'm talking to
Steve Goldsmith.
Steve. We're on interview number 2 and we've reached the point where you've arrived at Derby. You talked to us about your formative years in the game, but you've come into a fairly good side. It's a developing side, and as I think we said in the last interview, yourself, Peter Bowler, Alan Warner, players that had come from other counties, perhaps not had an opportunity to fulfil their potential. And of course you got 1,000 runs in your first season. So what was it like to feel that sense of you'd actually arrived as a county cricketer?
It's a good question. I came in believing that I could do it. I didn't have a problem with that. And I was coming into a side, as you say, that was full of particularly strong bowlers, plus the likes of Kim Barnett at the top of the order and John Morris. So we had a batting lineup as well. And as I remember, we used to prepare quite good green top wickets that suited our bowlers more than possibly our batters. But we scored runs on them, and we scored quite quickly. So coming in at sort of 5-6 in the side, it fitted quite nicely. And Pete Bowler had joined at the same time. It was the same year, and Pete got 2,000, I think, that year.
In 1990 he got 2,000.
Did he get 2,000 1990?
Yeah, he scored a phenomenal amount, 1,000 runs every year.
Incredible amount of runs. And he, I talk to Pete quite a lot at the moment. We're chatting away on various social medias as well as on the phone. And he said he was never a great flowing batsman, but he worked his socks off to improve. So you had that side of him to go with the Kim Barnett, which was flowing hands and hitting the ball. John Morris, who hit the ball all around the place. And then I might come in at 5 or 6 and generally had a bit of freedom to play. And even in those days, I was doing things which possibly not many others were. I was reverse sweeping at the time, and that was a new shot around. Not many had seen that being played. So I had sort of a little bit more license, I suppose. So you went out with a bit of confidence, and knowing also that you had probably one of the best fast bowling attacks possibly ever seen. To be going in with the likes of Michael Holding, Devon Malcolm, and then following up with Simon Bass, Jack Warner, these sorts of guys, Ollie Mortensen, who was just putting it on sixpence all afternoon. These sorts of guys just bowling on wickets that suited them as well.
All very different as well.
Yes.
Although right arm quicks,
yeah,
you wouldn't say any one of them was identical to the other.
No. You had the flowing Michael, Devon running in and just letting the thing go, and swinging it when he got it right. He swung it miles. Simon Bass hit the deck with this loping sort of Tony Gregg style run up, but then hit the deck hard. And all the bowlers were, as you say, slightly different and did different things, but bowled with incredible accuracy.
Just looking at, excuse me, that bowling attack, how did that evolve? Where we had Mortensen bowling the overs at the beginning and Jack bowling at the death. Where did that arise from? Was that something that just evolved over time?
I think it was. I assume that the captain and the coaches and various players, senior players particularly, worked their plans out. That I was never sort of in party to that sort of thing. I wasn't a bowler at that stage. Didn't do any bowling at that stage. So you sort of saw these guys doing their jobs. And particularly for Sunday League, where there was always somebody in the middle doing a split of 4 and 4, because you've got to rotate your ends. Somebody was in that middle spell, and you always knew Ollie Mortensen was going to bowl 8 on the bounce, straight off, and go for less than 20. And then you had to build, how you were going to build the middle order bowlers in, and then stick somebody at the death, two at the death to bowl. We did it quite well. We had a good side for it.
It was interesting because I think that period in the 80s was, we see it now with the huge amount of tactical and analysis stuff that's done on cricket, but I think the 80s was that period when it changed, because suddenly you started realising that just having a bowler who ran up to try and hit the top of off stump was not much good in the last 10 overs, because you'd go around the park. But the other thing which developed was the fielding. And I remember you became particularly in one-day cricket, with the sweeper fielding. You did covered a lot of ground. Was that something you enjoyed doing?
Oh, I loved it.
Did you develop as a fielder? Did you practice as a fielder?
I don't know whether we practiced. It was something that you just naturally did. I was just somebody who used to love throwing myself about, and I'm recovering from most of those injuries still to this day. But I used to do that, and when Chris Adams came along, there were the two of us. So one would cover one side of the boundary, one would be on the other side of the boundary. And to throw yourself, sliding stops and things like that, that really came to the fore, I should say, around those 80s period, and going into the late 80s particularly. Every side sort of had one or two that did it. Not everyone did it. Not like today where everybody's dives and fields balls. In those days there were people that you hid away. I can't remember Stan Mortensen ever doing anything and putting his foot on it, because he was a big bloke, and you don't want him injuring himself, and Michael and people like that. So yeah, we had certain roles as fielders, and you were good at it or you weren't, and I think that was something that I enjoyed doing. I enjoyed throwing myself around and sliding stops and all this sort of thing. I remember catching Dermot Reeve on the boundary here, and I heard the call of it being a no ball, and I caught it one-handed, and the crowd over my head, and the crowd, there was a big ooh and a big ah, but as I caught it, I came round and threw it straight in and nearly ran him out. And it was things like that that was fun, and so we were enjoying it and trying to hit the biggest catches and catch them one-handed and things, which are now the sort of things that coaches do as drills. Very straightforward.
I think it's fascinating we lived through that period of evolution because, as you say, it's de rigueur now, it just happens all the time, but the fact that it was something we watched change. I remember talking to Kim about it. He came back from a tour of South Africa and suddenly he started pointing to where the ball had gone in the outfield, and we'd now thought, what's going on here? And he'd said it's something he'd picked up in South Africa, because often boundary riders couldn't see the ball, so they'd point to it, and we thought, well, we can see it, why is he doing that? And it was just little things, and he mentioned Bob Woolmer earlier. I mean, he was one of the great innovators, wasn't he?
And from that South Africa thing, I should think that a lot of that would come from like John T. Rhodes, who was magnificent. And you see him take balls, and I saw him when I went out there in sort of 89, 90, dive for balls when it was totally unnecessary in the game. There was one game where he pulled off a magnificent full-length flying diving stop on the boundary off the last ball of the game, and the opposition still needed 190 to win in a one-day game. It was crazy, but that's what he loved doing, and it was superb.
Well, I guess the thing was that because South Africa were in isolation at that time, the only way you could get their innovations was if you went there to play their cricket, or they brought their cricketers here for overseas. You didn't see them in any other form.
We saw a few over here, not that many. I went over there coaching, so I needed to play for the winter and get fit again because I'd had a knee injury, and went over. I was blacklisted because in those days we were. It was just pre-apartheid finishing, but we were coaching in schools and this sort of thing. But we were seeing some of their day-night cricket particularly, which was completely different to anything over here. Coloured clothing hadn't come in over here yet, and to watch South Africa play or the provinces play in coloured gear, I've still got the kits at home. I collected loads and loads of them, and it was absolutely mind-blowing to see that, and floodlit cricket, which hadn't started here either. Even the trucks were parked outside the grounds hadn't arrived in this county, in this country at that time. So to see different formats, and that's how we learned, definitely. Going abroad, I had a winter in Australia before coming to Derby. When I was at Kent, I went to South Africa for 2 winters. You're sort of jobbing around a little bit because you need to earn in the winter. We were only paid for the summer, so you had to earn your crust, as it were. Going abroad was a great way to pick up a little bit of money, but also to pick up on your cricket.
So if we just go back to the 88 summer, because of course that was the year you already mentioned in the first interview, Derbyshire reached a Lord's final. Was there a sense of expectation, particularly in one-day cricket with the side that we'd got, that was a competition, or one-day cricket was a format we could excel at? Yeah,
definitely. In fact, I think I can remember being in, I say meetings, but team chats where we would, as a team, thought that we had a chance in one-day cricket. The championship was not something that I think the county, the players particularly and the coaches, felt that we had a hope of winning. It was more a case of playing those games and getting to each of the one days and competing in one-day cricket, because we had a side that could compete at that sort of level. And we had hitters, we had batters who could score. And in '88, to get to the Lord's final was a target that I think we felt we could achieve, and we did it. And it probably went pear-shaped when the toss went up.
Yeah.
Which late on in the summer, that was always the way, wasn't it?
Yeah.
If you got stuck in at Lord's, late on in the summer with the dew and everything else, and it swung around, and that was Stephen Jeffrey's year, wasn't it?
Yes.
Fifer, he got me out, and it was. But to get there, I think was something a bit special.
What do you remember? Do you remember much about the semi-final, which of course went to 3 days, didn't it? Down
Cardiff.
Swansea.
Swansea.
Yes.
Yeah. No, I don't remember much about it at all.
It was the game when Michael hit Maynard on the head, and his helmet came off and landed on the stumps.
Yeah.
So
to be fair, that's about the only thing I do remember of the whole trip. There was a lot of waiting around, wasn't there? Because it was horrible weather.
Went to the third afternoon.
Yeah, ended up on 3 days, and and then it was a mad rush to get back to wherever we had to be after that. But the excitement and the crowd actually stayed on.
Yeah.
As I remember, there was a big Derbyshire supporters group that went down. It may be true, but they stayed on for all 3 days. There was still a lot of our supporters down there, which was tremendous.
The Lord's finals back then, 1988, I can remember coming down here to buy your tickets, and they were queuing out the gate, and it was the days when you got 5,000 tickets per counter, you sold them, and Lord's was full. And I look back at that, it's one of the great days of my life, just being at a Lord's final. They were wonderful. So what was it like as a player? What was the build-up like, and what was the atmosphere like for you going to Lord's for a final?
If I remember, we got there and stayed in the hotel that's just outside the ground, and then came across, and we drove in through the Grace Gates and all the usual stuff, and then made our way upstairs. And I'd played there before, but only in sort of junior games, and I played a sort of South of England match there once, and then I think we had an odd game there for Derbyshire at that time, but not. In fact, it might have even been afterwards. So to go into the change rooms, you suddenly walk into these change rooms and up the stairs and all around. My biggest worry was getting lost coming down the stairs and keep going, because somebody had said that if you don't come off the stairs and down through the long room, you end up down in the basement somewhere.
I think that happened to David Steele, didn't it?
Yes, I think
he did. Test debut.
Yeah, you sort of think, I just don't want to get lost. But and the crowd building up, which was huge. Yeah. And I think there was always this thing you couldn't practice and on the outfield. You had to go across to the nursery ground, so they were getting a bit irate with some of the stewards just for walking across. So they were directing you around, and we go, hang on a minute, this is our day, we're going to enjoy it, we're going to do it our way, and breaking all the rules.
I can't imagine Michael Holding taking much notice of it.
I don't think many of us did at all. We just sort of said, no, we're going over there, and we're going this way, and stop us if you dare. But it was great, and the build up, the supporters building up, the stands filling up, the atmosphere sort of building up, and standing out on that little balcony, which is tiny. Yeah. To go out and stand on that balcony and just soak it all in, and everybody had said, just make sure you soak up the information of what's coming at you, because don't get overawed by it. And we tried to do as much of that as possible. And then the toss went up, and it was game on. Yeah,
there's not much you can do when somebody takes 5 for 13, is there really? It's just. I remember from our perspective, a steward came up to us and said, you need to drink, because you're allowed to take beer in those days. And he said, I suggest you start drinking your beer a bit faster, because this is going to be over by 10. But of course, when Hampshire battered, you took, and I don't want to embarrass you, but you took what is regarded as one of the greatest, certainly running catches ever seen at Lord's. And it was featured for years and years. Every time there was a bit of footage of cricket, your catch was featured, and I remember the huge roar when you took it. What do you remember about that, if at all? Or was it too
remember.
amazing?
No, I remember very clearly. Robin Smith had hit a ball just behind square on the leg side, and probably only maybe 2 balls before, something like that. And I'd run round, and being somebody who dived for the ball, etc., went to dive, realising that it was actually where the corner of the tavern was, and there was a concrete wall that stuck out. So there was all the covers were lined up on just off the boundary edge, and then this wall sticking out, and I was going to go head first into this wall. So it was a do or die job, and I decided that I was not going to die today. and I let it go, and I was furious with myself for not having gone for it. And then when the ball went up, which it went straight up off the top edge, over the top of Bernie Mayer, and I just set off and I went, well, I'm going for this one. And I think it was around about probably 40, 50 yards and slightly uphill because I was down in the bottom corner. And as it came down, I just launched myself and ended up sticking my knee in the ground and rolling over and ending up on my knees. And the shot that I can remember is Pete Bowler looking over, looking in disbelief, going, well, how's he caught that? And me sitting on the floor on my knees, absolutely shattered.
Yeah.
And I couldn't celebrate or anything, but you know, because I was absolutely worn out, puffing away. But yeah, I always tell everybody that one, I get a taxi to go that far these days, and two, I have my eyes closed.
Well, we were in the tavern, and I remember just thinking that's just ridiculous.
Yeah.
The thing I remember most about that final actually is, even though we were defending a low total, was when Michael and Devon opened the bowling. There was this amazing roar from the crowd, from the Derbyshire people who knew we weren't going to. Yeah, it was highly unlikely we were going to win, but still got behind the team, you know, as best they could in the circumstances.
But our crowd always did.
It was a great day, wasn't it?
I mean, it was, for a lot of people, we used to get smallish crowds here. We know that. Sunday League used to get good crowds, and for one day cricket generally, we always had a decent turnout. When you go to Lords, and it's huge, like a game like that, we know there's going to be big crowds, and they're going to make a day of it, because it doesn't happen that often.
Absolutely.
For whoever you play for, so you know, our crowd was going to enjoy the day no matter what the result was, and you know, defending a low score, that's the way it goes. We're going to have fun in the meantime, and a few pints in the tavern, I should say.
Indeed. And was there much of an inquest after that, or was it acknowledged, we've got a good team here, we can progress, but it's just one of those days?
Yeah, it was just one of those days. And I mean, Stephen Jeffries bowled, swung it round corners, didn't he, that day? He hit me on the pad in front of middle. I had a big stride in, thinking that swung miles. I think it was my third ball. I thought, there's no way that's out. David Constant gave me out. I had a chat with him later. He said, I never give them out unless they're out, Goldie. And I said, well, I thought it was going down. I said, but I saw it on a TV 10 minutes later. And I said it was absolutely plumb.
Right,
and it was.
Okay.
You know, you couldn't argue with it. It swung like a boomerang and then straightened on to hit everything. And it was just one of those days. That was his day, and it wasn't ours. We had ours, you know, a little bit later on.
Well, we'll come to that in a moment, but for now, Steve, thanks very much.
Cheers.